Price wars and political bragging rights as a big power company freezes its prices. SSE cuts jobs and profits to keep tariffs on hold till 2016. Others could follow.
Can he explain why a price freeze was wrong 6 months ago, but it's the right thing to do today?
It's our policy that bills should be cut, and bills are being cut under this government.
Also tonight, images of 122 new objects give fresh focus to the hunt for MH370.
The biggest teachers' union claims success in the pay and pension strike. Ministers say just 1 in 8 schools was affected. And...
oh no, oh no, oh no.
a leap of faith from an inferno and a classic. What happens next?
This is ITV News at 6:30 with Alistair, Stewart and Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. Under pressure from politicians, a big drop in customers and a probable competition inquiry, one of the big power companies blinked today. After a run of price rises, SSE froze its charges, cut jobs and profits, hoping that would take the heat off it.
The announcement led to a row between David Cameron and Ed Miliband, with each claiming credit for the change. Other power companies are expected to follow. Our business editor Joel Hills reports.
SSE says it's listened to its 8 million customers, that it understands their pain, and as a result, it's decided to freeze its prices.
We feel that we need to be out there acting on behalf of our customers, and the clearest thing for us to do was to freeze prices out until January 2016 at the earliest.
Are you doing this because you're losing customers?
No, we're doing it for existing customers.
You are losing customers though, aren't you?
We've lost some customers recently. Smaller suppliers who have a natural advantage over us because they're not paying the green levies have certainly made some inroads.
How many customers have you lost in the last year?
In the last year, a few 100,000.
According to the watchdog, SSE's price freeze means that the average dual fuel bill will be held at £1,174 a year for the next 20 months. SSE's bills are slightly lower than some of the rest of the big six, but how generous this freeze proves depends on how rivals respond. Remember, SSE's prices won't go up, but they won't go down either. The politics of this is unavoidable, and in the Commons, both sides claimed credit.
Week after week, he denounced Labour's call for an energy price freeze to help families and businesses. But now apparently, he supports the price freeze. Can he explain why a price freeze was wrong 6 months ago, but it's the right thing to do today?
What we have done is reduce the costs of energy charges so that companies are able to cut their bills.
6 months ago, when Ed Miliband promised a future Labour government would cap energy bills, SSE described the policy as unsustainable. Times have changed.
We agreed with Ed that it was entirely sensible to look at keeping people's bills down.
Ed Miliband's intervention last September has been extremely significant, hasn't it?
I think he certainly changed the way people look at the energy market. He got a lot of interest in the energy market, and it made it very, very clear to a lot of us that affordability was the biggest issue.
Consumer groups have applauded SSE's decision to freeze its prices. The market claims to be competitive. We'll wait and see if the freeze spreads.
That's precisely the point. I mean, a bold move from SSE, but none of the others have moved yet. Why?
All quiet so far, but they'll be considering their position. This was an unexpected decision. And let's remember, a price freeze costs companies money. In the case of SSE, £100 million. They're cutting jobs as a result. 500s are going. They're also reining back investments, building fewer wind farms offshore than they were planning to. It's the timing, though, of this move which I think is really raising eyebrows. Tomorrow morning, the regulator is expected to refer not just SSE, but all of the big six, in fact, the whole industry, to the competition inquiries for a full investigation. There are plenty of cynics out there, but as you saw the boss say there, this move, he claims, was always on the cards.
Joel, thank you.
Latest satellite images have revealed 122 new objects, potential debris from the missing Malaysian airliner. The pictures were taken on Sunday over an area of around 150 square miles in the southern Indian Ocean. But as our China correspondent Lucy Watson explains, the search area is still much wider.
These are the visual images, and the white dots were the debris.
We've seen images like these before, but not so many. 122 potential objects now spotted by French satellite.
Some objects were a meter in length, others were as much as 23 meters in length. Some of the objects appeared to be bright, possibly indicating solid material.
Possibly, he said, yet again a word of caution, but the evidence is now building. The search is now focused 1,550 miles off the coast of Perth. It's a 622,000 square mile stretch, and that part of the ocean has depths of 23,000 feet, with complex terrain and undersea volcanoes. So from first light, those search efforts must begin every day, trying to home in on the truth.
I personally wish that we can find the aircraft with your family members till tonight.
And that official Malaysian sentiment relayed to relatives in Beijing today is shared by those there desperate for definitive proof.
A lot of work that we need to do, and we need to continue that for a long time.
Paul Ying has been counselling the families.
Because normally in a situation like this, if it's a regular air disaster, people go into grief, and then from that point on, we try to start a healing process. But this long period of uncertainty makes it impossible for healing to start, because there isn't a starting point. We have to understand these people just went through something that no one has gone through before.
We've witnessed extremes of emotion over the past 19 days, particularly here in China. But today, Malaysian officials came to talk to relatives and had somewhat more compassion and sensitivity towards them, even admitting, yes, we have made mistakes. And that had a calming effect on the relatives. That, combined with the now multiple possible sightings by French satellites, there seems to be more of a resignation and an acceptance now of their loss. Lucy Watson, ITV News, Beijing.
Here, tens of thousands of teachers across England and Wales have been striking today over pay, pensions and conditions. The National Union of Teachers said the action showed teachers were tired of intolerable pressures. But officials at the Department for Education claim only 1 in 8 schools fully closed. Dan Rivers reports from the West Country.
Silence in class in many schools across Britain as thousands of teachers walked out, furious at cuts to pensions, changes to pay and conditions. Many came to rallies like this one in Bristol, where noise was actively encouraged. Members of the National Union of Teachers marching to a different beat from other teaching unions who'd not taken part in today's action.
I think it's this is very short-term inconvenience. I think the future of education is really frightening.
We don't do this very often, and it's only because Mr Gove wouldn't actually entertain proper talks.
The Bristol City Academy was typical of the schools partially closed, the daily rhythm of lessons severely disrupted, pupils enjoying the unusual atmosphere created by the strike.
The empty classrooms here are reflected across the country. In this school, about a third of the pupils are off school because about half the teachers are on strike. They have managed to lay on some maths and English lessons for GCSE level students, but the rest are stuck at home.
Assessing the scale of the disruption is difficult. The Department for Education is still collating the figures, so we attempted to get a national snapshot. In England and Wales, ITV News found that in Blackpool, 25 out of 41 schools were closed or partially closed. That's 61%. In Telford and Wrekin, 11 out of 86 schools were affected. That's 13%. And in Bridgend, 12 of a total of 61 schools were hit, 20%. Many of those teachers who didn't strike today still had sympathy for those who did.
I can understand when people feel under attack, they're going to fight back, and this is how they've chosen to do it.
But mothers like Kerry Warner feel they've paid the price by missing work today.
I've lost my day's pay today. That's my choice to take it without holiday, but I'm not going to penalise the children.
And how does that make you feel towards the teachers?
A bit annoyed.
The NUT says teachers from Westminster to Wales are fed up. The government says only 1 in 8 schools closed fully, but there's bad news for revising students. More strikes could be on the cards this summer. Dan Rivers, ITV News, Bristol.
The publicist Max Clifford has told his trial that claims he had a sexual interest in children are revolting, utterly untrue, disgusting lies.
But he told Southwark Crown Court he did have a number of affairs and didn't think he'd be caught out. Juliet Bremner was there.
The 70-year-old PR man has spent the last 3 weeks listening to allegations that he sexually assaulted young women. Today, it was Max Clifford's turn to give evidence. He rejected the idea he'd ever forced himself on a woman. Although he was married with a daughter, he admitted having at least 3 long-term affairs, which he described as meaningful, special relationships. He told the jury, "I knew what I was doing was morally wrong, but I didn't think we would ever be found out." Adding, "Just about everybody I knew in the business was having affairs, so it seemed pretty natural and normal." The publicist also spoke about his links with convicted paedophile Gary Glitter, whose activities he claimed he'd helped to expose in a tabloid newspaper. He was asked by his barrister, "Have you ever had a sexual interest in children?" Becoming increasingly angry, Mr. Clifford replied, No, it's utterly revolting, utterly untrue, disgusting, lies." Several women have alleged that Max Clifford attacked them in his offices in London's New Bond Street. He accepted he'd had sex in the office, but only occasionally and never without their consent.
Mr. Clifford told the court that his business reputation relied on trust. He said he couldn't risk clients leaving and saying, "You don't want to go and see Max Clifford because he's going to touch you up." It would ruin his reputation, he told them.
Although the jury heard he had contacts in the movie business, he ridiculed the idea that he could get young models without any acting experience into films. They've been warned by Mr. Clifford's barrister that he'll be giving evidence for many days as he deals with allegations from 7 women spanning 20 years. All allegations he denies. Juliet Bremner, ITV News.
MPs today voted overwhelmingly to put a limit on total government spending on welfare. The measure was backed by all the main parties, but there was a small Labour rebellion. From 2015, welfare spending will be capped at £119.5 billion, but excluding job seekers' allowance and state pensions.
Liberal Democrat leader Nick Clegg and UKIP's Nigel Farage go head-to-head for the first time tonight in a debate over whether or not Britain should stay in the European Union. In the past few minutes, Mr Farage arrived at the venue in central London and Mr Clegg arrived shortly afterwards. The discussion is due to start at 7 o'clock. And our political editor, Tom Bradby, is there. Tom, how significant is tonight's debate for both men and their parties?
Well, pretty, but I think maybe the first thing to say is that it's also in some ways quite significant to the country, because if the Tories win the next election, a big if admittedly, but if they do, we will, they say, get a referendum on whether we should be in or out of the EU. Therefore, it is possible that we may leave in the next 5 years. And it's quite rare that you actually have this issue debated. So in that sense, it's significant. It's significant for Nigel Farage, of course, because he still doesn't have an MP. He doesn't get as much publicity as he would like. And there are a lot of people here. You can see that it's going to get some publicity tonight. It's important for Nick Clegg, A, because he's absolutely passionate about this issue, B, because, you know, he doesn't get as much publicity as he'd like either these days, nor are his poll ratings what they'd like them to be. So it's an opportunity for him. I think perhaps most interestingly of all, you hear this issue talked about so much. You so rarely actually get a debate on the issues involving it. You so rarely get either side talking about how they envisage what life would be like one way or another if we actually left. We're going to get some of the substance of that tonight, and in that sense I think it could be interesting.
Tom Bradby, thank you.
Still to come, why teenagers could be given easier access to emergency contraception.
A conscious uncoupling, how Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin announced their separation.
Hell, he can jump from there. I mean, good grief.
And caught on camera, a remarkable rescue from this burning building in the United States.
Those stories and more after this very short break. Join us then. Some couples divorce, others separate. But the actress Gwyneth Paltrow and her rock star husband, the Coldplay singer Chris Martin, have coined a new phrase by announcing that they have consciously uncoupled. Their breakup comes after 11 years of marriage. Nina Nanar has been looking at the language of a very modern breakup.
It was rare to see them in public together. This 2 months ago seemed to suggest all was well between the Hollywood star and her husband. But now Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin have confirmed their marriage is over. The announcement was made on her lifestyle website, goop.com, where it reads, "It is with hearts full of sadness that we have decided to separate. We have come to the conclusion that while we love each other very much, we will remain separate. We have always conducted our relationship privately, and we hope that as we consciously uncouple and co-parent, we will be able to continue in the same manner. Love, Gwyneth and Chris." The couple met shortly after her father died 12 years ago. Martin wrote this song for her. They have 2 children, Apple and Moses.
I would I were thy bird.
The actress, who won an Oscar for Shakespeare in Love, has used her website over the years to share recipes and her thoughts on marriage. While conscious uncoupling may seem a strange way to describe the breakup, it apparently refers to a belief system used by American counsellors to aid a peaceful divorce.
It's where there's no blame, no guilt, no shame. So you've worked through your problems, you've resolved your problems, you still care for each other, and you separate as friends.
Just last year, the couple moved from London, where they have spent most of their married life, back to LA, her home city. In May, Coldplay will release a new album. But ahead of the announcement of their breakup, the couple and their children are thought to have gone on holiday together. Nina Nanar, ITV News.
The number of people killed by a mudslide in the United States has risen to 24. More than 170 people are still unaccounted for. Footage released today shows the moment a boy was airlifted to safety after a 20-foot mudslide hit the rural town of Oso in Washington state. Dozens of homes have also been destroyed.
And shares in the smartphone game Candy Crush have not opened quite as well as expected on this, the first day of trading. After initially raising $500 billion, shares in King Digital Entertainment dropped by 11% on their trading debut.
Teenagers in England, including under 16s, could be given easier access to condoms and the morning after pill. GPs, chemists and school nurses are being encouraged to offer the emergency contraceptive in advance under new NHS guidance. It's aimed at cutting Britain's high rate of teenage pregnancy. But as Martha Fairley's been finding out, campaigners are outraged, claiming it will encourage teenagers to sleep around.
Teenagers will tell you it's a difficult part of growing up, but new guidelines say young people in England need better access to contraception to reduce unwanted pregnancies. These students in East London say even when services are available, many people still worry about going for advice.
Young people may be afraid or ashamed of other people see them knowing about the sex life.
It's more of like us encouraging them to actually take that first step, to actually know that the help is then showing them where the help is and actually getting them to go.
Some people do have doubts about the confidentiality, but I think that if you need help, like, you should go for it. There shouldn't be no questions about it. Like, you should be confident with the help.
Latest figures show the pregnancy rate for 15 to 17-year-olds is at its lowest for 45 years. The number of pregnancies in under 18s fell by 10% between 2011 and 2012 to less than 28,000, while pregnancies in under 16s dropped by 9% from nearly 6,000 to 5,500. That's still amongst the highest in Europe, but guidance to supply the morning after pill in advance to teenagers has drawn criticism.
I think the NICE advice is misguided. I think we are already offering the morning after pill in many places. You can have it on prescription, but you can also buy it. But I think this idea of stockpiling as a just in case is not very good medicine.
What we're trying to do is really, first and foremost, to encourage a responsible attitude to the control of fertility, but where things go wrong, to provide a safety net as well.
And reducing unwanted pregnancies in under 25s won't just change lives. It could save the NHS millions of pounds. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
And finally, dramatic pictures from Texas, where a construction worker has cheated death by the slimmest of margins.
He was working on the top floor of a new apartment block in Houston when fire engulfed the building, leaving him trapped precariously on a balcony. From the United States, John Ray takes up the story.
A $50 million apartment complex up in smoke and fast-moving flames. One man trying to keep his cool. A construction worker trapped on a fifth-floor balcony, looking in vain for a fire exit. The only way was down.
Oh my God. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Oh!
Commentary courtesy of watching office workers close enough to feel the heat. The rescue just in time thanks to a long ladder and the Houston Fire Brigade.
They need to move that truck up. Oh my God. Oh no, my God.
I said, all right, come on. And he had to make the leap, so he kind of jumped and grabbed on, and I said, hang on.
The unnamed worker might have a second career as a Hollywood stunt double in any remake of the towering Inferno. He escaped unscathed, unlike the building he was putting the finishing touches to, which is now a burnt-out ruin. John Ray, ITV News in the United States.
Wow. And to see that remarkable rescue in full, do go to our website, itv.com/news.
Several times, I suspect. Now, here's Julie Etchingham with what's on ITV News at 10.
On tonight's programme, more women than ever may be on the boards of Britain's leading companies, but some who've broken through say there's still a long way to go.
Do you know, companies cannot ignore half the population. You know, there are incredibly talented women out there that some businesses are failing to recognise.
And is another male bastion about to fall? Why the Royal and Ancient Golf Club could vote to allow women members after a mere 250 years. Those stories and more at 10.
John, Julie and Mark Austin for that later from the two of us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.